In a world where anger often overshadows compassion, small acts of courage and kindness remind us what truly matters. Today's story will touch your heart and inspire you to believe in second chances. If you love powerful stories of humanity, don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Breeze, where every tale carries the breath of compassion. The night sky over Willow Creek was painted with the deep blue of twilight, the first stars twinkling faintly as the summer air carried the scent of pine and damp earth. Matthew Carter walked slowly along the winding trail with his 10-year-old daughter, Lily, their footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. These evening walks had become their sanctuary since his wife passed away 4 years earlier, a ritual of healing where silence, stories, and the gentle hum of the forest helped them stitch grief into something resembling peace. Lily skipped ahead a little, her long hair catching the fading light, her laughter echoing through the stillness as she pointed out fireflies beginning to flicker in the undergrowth. "Dad, look, they're like tiny lanterns," she whispered, cupping her hands to catch one before letting it go. Matthew smiled softly, though behind his eyes lingered the quiet heaviness of a man who carried too many burdens. He was a mechanic by trade, his days spent fixing the cars of neighbors who barely scraped by. The work was steady, honest, and exhausting. But these walks, these were sacred. They were his promise to Lily that even in loss, life could still hold moments of beauty. Then, suddenly, Lily froze. Her head tilted as though she had caught something just beyond the edge of ordinary sound. "Dad, did you hear that?" Matthew stopped, holding his breath. At first, there was only the familiar chorus of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. Then it came again, faint, broken, human. A cry, carried on the night breeze. "Help, please, someone, help." Matthew's chest tightened. The sound was weak, desperate, the kind that reached straight past reason and into instinct. He glanced at Lily, who looked at him wide-eyed. "Stay close to me," he said gently, his voice steady though his heart had begun to race. They stepped off the trail, pushing through thick brush and brambles, following the sound. In a small hollow beneath a ridge, they found him. A man lay sprawled on the ground, his body twisted unnaturally. His suit, once fine and pressed, was torn and dirty, his face pale beneath streaks of blood. One leg was bent at an angle that screamed of a break, and his left arm was pinned beneath a heavy fallen branch. He looked up at them with eyes filled with terror and exhaustion. "Please," he rasped. I think my ribs are broken. I can't move." Matthew dropped to his knees beside him, his hands moving with the calm urgency of someone who had seen emergencies before. He had once worked as a volunteer firefighter before Lily was born, and though the years had dulled some of his skills, his instincts were still sharp. He pressed his fingers gently against the man's wrist, his pulse was weak but steady. "Lily," Matthew said, his voice firm but calm, "I need you to run back to the trail. Find the first person you see and tell them to call 911. Tell them we're near Ridge Hollow, a man is injured. Can you remember that?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Ridge Hollow, 911. I'll be fast." She darted away, her footsteps fading into the night. The man groaned, his body trembling. "Please, don't leave me here." "I'm not leaving," Matthew assured him, working to shift the heavy branch without jarring the broken arm too badly. "What's your name?" The man swallowed hard. "Gregory. Gregory Halloway." Matthew froze for a moment. He knew that name. Everyone in Willow Creek did. Gregory Halloway was the wealthy industrialist who had bought up large sections of land for mining and factories, displacing dozens of families in the process. Matthew had watched good friends lose their homes, their fields poisoned, their way of life uprooted. His own brother had moved away after losing work because of one of Halloway's acquisitions. To many in the town, Gregory Halloway was a villain. For a flicker of a second, the thought crossed Matthew's mind. This man had caused pain, upheaval, hardship. Fate had left him broken in the forest. But then Matthew looked into his eyes filled with fear, pain, and humanity, and the thought dissolved. Whatever Gregory had done in boardrooms or on balance sheets, here he was just a man fighting to hold on to life. Matthew tightened his grip on the branch and heaved, shifting it enough to free Gregory's arm. The businessman gasped, tears springing to his eyes from the pain. Why are you helping me? You must know who I am. What I've done." Matthew met his gaze steadily. "Because my daughter is watching me. And I want her to grow up knowing that compassion isn't something you give only to people you agree with. It's something you give because it's right." Gregory's lip trembled, his mind spinning with the weight of words he'd never heard spoken to him before. In his world, everything came with conditions, bargains, or leverage. No one had ever helped him without expecting repayment. And here was a man, blue-collar, weathered, who had every reason to hate him, risking himself to save him. Minutes stretched long, and then the sound of voices and hurried footsteps broke through the night. Lily returned with 2 hikers who had already called for help. They lit the area with flashlights, their beams dancing over the scene. As they waited for paramedics, Gregory turned to Matthew. His voice was broken, raw. You don't know what this means. Tonight, I saw death. And I saw you save me, when you could have turned away. I've spent years building power, wealth, but it's been empty. I've destroyed families, stolen homes. And now, lying here helpless, I finally understand the weight of what I've done." Matthew shook his head gently. "Then let this be your second chance. But don't waste it on promises. Real change doesn't come from words, it comes from action. From listening to the people you've hurt and making it right." Gregory's eyes filled with tears, not from pain but from something deeper, a recognition of a truth he had avoided for too long. When the paramedics finally arrived and lifted him onto a stretcher, he gripped Matthew's hand with surprising strength. "I'll remember this. I swear I will." 3 months later, the people of Willow Creek woke to headlines that stunned them. Gregory Halloway had announced the creation of the Willow Creek Restoration Fund, pledging millions to rebuild displaced neighborhoods, clean polluted rivers, and invest in jobs for families he had once harmed. And at the center of it, overseeing community outreach, was Matthew Carter, the mechanic who had once dragged him from the forest floor. The projects began quickly: new homes, repaired farmland, scholarships for children of displaced families. For the first time in years, the town buzzed with hope instead of resentment. Gregory himself walked the sites, shaking hands, listening, apologizing. And each time he saw Lily, who often accompanied her father, he was reminded of the night he had been saved, not just from death, but from himself. The man who had once been crushed beneath the weight of his own greed now found purpose in rebuilding lives. And the father who had once walked the forest trails searching only for peace discovered that sometimes the greatest legacies aren't forged in steel or stone, but in acts of mercy that ripple outward, reshaping entire communities. Because sometimes saving a life is more than pulling someone from the edge of death. Sometimes it is pulling them back into their own humanity, giving them a chance to build something better, not just for themselves, but for everyone whose lives their choices touch. And in Willow Creek, under the quiet watch of fireflies and stars, 2 unlikely men, one born of blue-collar grit, the other of ruthless wealth, found themselves bound by a single night of compassion that changed them both forever.